Hold on. It
Good
keeps going.
evening. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to let you guys know this is a special edition of Renee's Remedies because usually I'm by myself and I'm just really quickly rattle off something. It might be 15 minutes, might be 20. Usually it's like 15. But today, special edition, one, it's Women's History Month and we are women. Two, we're going to talk about something that usually does affect women, but it can affect men as well. And we're going to talk about fertility. So I brought my friend, my fertility doctor, Dr. Cindy Duke, who is I swear she knows everything when it comes to this and a whole lot of other things too, because she's a virologist, in case you didn't know. But Dr. Cindy Duke practices in Las Vegas, Nevada. But I want to make sure that everyone knows up front she sees patients all over the globe. I'm talking about across the water, all over the country. So if you need her services, you should get in touch with her. And the information is in the box below, right here on YouTube. And for those that are watching on other platforms, I don't think the link will be in there, but it's definitely on YouTube. So come over to YouTube. That's where the party's at. And if you have questions, you want to type them in and I will see them. And then if you don't want anyone to know you asked the question, you can send them to my inbox on Ask Dr. Renee, or if you have my email address, send them there and we will check them and we'll try to get those answered for you today. Okay. So thank you, Dr. Cindy, for joining me this evening.
Well, as always, Dr. Renee, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So first things first, like I said, we had a question already before we even started. Right. How do I know how my fertility is?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great question, and I want to actually use it as a point of clarification as well. So the truth is we have no test that can actually tell someone if they're fertile or infertile. So the definition of fertility has to do with trying to achieve pregnancy. However, we do have a lot of tests that can tell us if everything is where it should be to optimize your chances at having successful fertility. So, for example, when we define fertility, we're really defining it based on infertility. So infertility, we generally define based on a woman, a person born with eggs. So a woman, anyone born with ovaries. So not necessarily the binary I identify as a woman, but someone born with a uterus and ovaries. So infertility is defined by age of the person born with ovaries. If you're under 35 years old, infertility is defined as having regular unprotected intercourse. And so we define regular as every other day around the time of ovulation for 12 months. If you haven't conceived and gone on to achieve pregnancy that leads to a delivery of a live-born infant, then that's considered infertility if you are having trouble spontaneously conceiving and delivering. If you're 35 or older, it's 6 months. Same definition, regular unprotected intercourse, but for 6 months. And so that's how we define infertility. So then what do you need to have all those optimal chances such that if you're having regular unprotected intercourse under the age of 35 or regular unprotected intercourse for 6 months, 35 and older, you need to have eggs, you need to have sperm, you need to have a place in your body for sperm and egg to meet, which is the fallopian tubes. And ideally, the womb needs to also have a normal shape and have the capacity to carry. And so when we do an evaluation, or we call it fertility testing, while we're not testing to tell you if you're fertile or infertile necessarily, we're testing to see if you have those ingredients. So for egg number, we really do a blood test and an ultrasound. So the blood test is called AMH, or anti-Müllerian hormone, which is a hormone made uniquely by our ovaries, and it's being made by those cells that have been taking care of your eggs ever since your ovaries formed. And then we will do a hysterosalpingogram, which is a dye test. It's a modified X-ray where we inject dye through the cervix, and the goal is to see the dye travel up from the cervix into the womb and spread then into the fallopian tubes and spill into the belly. So that's called a hysterosalpingogram, or an HSG. And really what that test does is it's tracing the path that sperm usually need to travel to go find an egg in the body, because, you know, what we know is even though babies grow in the womb, they actually start in the fallopian tubes. That's where sperm and egg meet. So we need to check that place. And then secondly, the other thing we check is sperm. So if someone is planning or have been trying to conceive and they're having difficulty, we don't just check the eggs and the place in the body to whether it's supposed to meet. And this is important because I can't tell you how many women, especially women of color, I meet who the sole burden of infertility, they believe, falls on them. And so if they've been trying and they can't conceive, they come in and they want to get worked up, but they're not getting the partner who is making sperm worked up. Yet we know 50% of the time when people are struggling to conceive, it involves something with the sperm. So the next thing we do as part of the evaluation or fertility testing is we do a semen analysis, which simply means we have the person who's producing sperm create a sperm sample, which is a semen sample, usually after abstaining from ejaculation, somewhere between 2 to 7 days of no ejaculation, collect the semen, and then we look under a microscope to examine the semen for sperm concentration, meaning the total number of sperm there, how they're moving, because those sperm need to be able to swim and swim in millions. We need millions of them swimming up to the tube to find one egg. And then we also need them to have normal shape. And so that's called morphology. So we're looking at concentration, we're looking at motility, which is how the sperm moves, and we're looking at morphology, which is how the sperm is shaped. And the fourth thing we look at is the total amount of semen being made. So we're using World Health Organization criteria, and we're looking to see if there's at least 1.5 milliliters of semen being produced, because if it's less than that, then we're looking at either a very concentrated sample, which makes it really hard for the sperm to get out of that mix, because semen is proteins, it's sperm, it's fluid, versus if it's nice and voluminous, meaning the sperm have better chances of escaping that mix, that milieu. So that's what fertility testing is. And if somebody asks me, how can I check my fertility? Again, we can't do those tests and tell you, okay, you're fertile. But we can do those tests and tell you if everything is in place that should facilitate you being able to conceive. But we can test those things and they all be normal. However, if you've been trying for over a year and you're under 35, that's still infertility. We'll call it unexplained infertility if we can't find anything that's out of the usual, out of the normal, based on our testing criteria. Or if you're 35 and older, if you've been trying for 6 months, even when we test those things, if they're off, then we're still talking about infertility based on our definition.
Thank you. So basically, you should go to your doctor and you should talk to them. And you should she just told you the name of the test. You could ask them that, can they please perform these tests? Or then you go to a lovely clinic like Nevada Fertility Institute, which is Dr. Cindy's place, and you get these tests done. And like I said, even though she is in Vegas, you can get all these things done wherever you're at. She can read the tests, and then you can still, she can still be your doctor. So, so the other thing I wanted to definitely talk about is, as I mentioned before, insurance. So we know that there are several states that do actually make sure that some sort of fertility something is covered, right?
Yeah, at this point we have somewhere between 16 to 20 states in the union that have either partial or full fertility mandates. The most recent one to come online was New York State in 2020. They passed the law so that there's actually fertility coverage. So now it depends, right? So, a state may have a mandate, but then there are certain caveats. So for example, people who might be on public assistance may not be eligible, which in my opinion is actually problematic to say that, because we know based on a Supreme Court decision from the 1940s, reproduction is a human right here in the United States. That's a Supreme Court decision. But there are some states where if you're on public assistance, the mandate does not extend to you, versus for others, the partial mandate states, it's extended really through employer-based insurance and employer-based insurance alone. While in other states like Illinois, you can literally participate even in the marketplace, or what we call Obamacare, and find policies that cover your fertility benefits as well.
Exactly. So Dawn Day said, repeat, please. So AMH is the blood test. And then you said a hysterosalpinogram, right?
So AMH, hysterosalpingogram, or HSG, semen analysis, and ideally a pelvic ultrasound somewhere around the second or third day of your menstrual cycle. But even if they weren't able to do that ultrasound, very much so starting with the blood test, at least the AMH is a great way to go. There are a number of even at-home testing companies now where you can go online and they'll send you a kit to your house so that you can get the blood testing done for the AMH. Usually it will include, say, AMH, FSH, which is follicle stimulating hormone. That one has to be drawn on day 2 or 3 of your cycle, whereas AMH can be drawn anytime, which also means if your periods aren't regular, it's okay, because the AMH is still a great readout no matter where you are in your cycle, whether you have regular periods or not. And then the semen analysis, there are also more and more places that do send out testing or at-home testing. And then the hysterosalpingogram does need to be ordered via your physician, but that can be ordered via your OBGYN. It can be ordered by a fertility specialist. Many family doctors as well, if they're comfortable, can also order that test. Certainly, as a clinic that does a lot of virtual medicine, we're able to order those tests for our patients wherever they are in the world, whether they're in the United States, outside of the US. We work with everyone.
Awesome. So when you figure out if you're, what is the phone call? So you make a phone call to the insurance company. What exactly are you asking them? So say you're somebody who just is at the point of freezing eggs.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's really helpful, and I do have a book that's coming out that has a chapter solely on this part. But I agree, it's a quagmire. Calling up your insurance isn't super helpful unless you know what to ask for. So it's not enough to say, does this plan or this policy cover fertility or infertility? Because they may say yes, but really all it covers is the testing. Some of them will just cover testing if you don't know what to ask for. Others will say, oh yeah, you have fertility treatment, but they're only covering insemination. Others will say, yes, we cover in vitro, but they don't cover egg freezing. So you actually need to be specific. And the way you get specific is you ask them for the codes, right? So there are these 5-digit universal codes, which are known as CPT, or what we call common procedural terminology. So CPT codes are these 5-digit codes that have been agreed upon around the world to denote procedures. And so you can literally give those codes to the insurance, to your insurance broker, if you're, say, in the marketplace. If you're going it through your HR, you can give it to your HR person. But these CPT codes are what you can give to them to know specifically what you need tested and what you need covered. So for example, if you're looking to get egg freezing done, you do need the egg freezing CPT codes. The best way to get those is to ask your clinic what the codes are, because the clinic is who bills those codes ultimately. But those are the codes you can ask your insurance, do you cover these codes? And if they say, I want a plan that covers these codes, because they may have 5 or 6 different plans. It's
right.
up to you to know which plan, because maybe, without knowing the codes, they'll tell you one plan versus another, and there's maybe a cost difference of $100 a month. Most people are going to go for the one that's $100 cheaper, but that $100 cheaper premium per month may not cover egg freezing. So when you give the codes, you may hear, oh, the one that's $100 extra per month covers this code. Suddenly, it's actually a better savings for you. But the other thing to ask your insurance is not just the codes. Even if they cover something, your next question is, what is my deductible? Meaning, how much money do you have to spend out of pocket before they will cover the service for you? And at what percentage do they cover the service? Because that's called copay, right? So some insurances will cover something at 100%. Some will cover it at 40%. Others may cover it at 60%. It's really important to know that fraction as well and figure out what your fraction, your responsibility would be. Because I've also met patients where they have insurance, but it's a high deductible insurance. So for example, egg freezing altogether may cost you $10,000 cash out of pocket, including the egg freeze procedure and your medications and what you're paying to the clinic, 10,000 or so total. And so you may have an insurance plan where you're thinking, my insurance will cover it, but your insurance maybe requires you to spend $6,000 out of pocket first on your medical care for the year. And then they may also only cover it maybe 60%. So you also have to pay for the service 40%. So it's really important to know all that part. I think, unfortunately, Dr. Renee, from a health literacy standpoint, I really do believe that we should have all been taught about health insurance in high school and how health insurance works in terms of deductibles, co-pays, etc. But we haven't been. So now we have to do it the way we're doing it here, which is educating the masses.
Definitely. So let me break it down again, and I'll give myself as an example. I called the insurance. Well, actually, I looked in the big book.
Yes.
The book came, and I was like, you know what? This book is sitting here. I should look at it. And I flipped through, and sure enough, there was a whole fertility section. I said, well, I'll be. So then I called to confirm what I was reading to make sure I was understanding. But I will tell you that I am a solopreneur. Most people know I'm an entrepreneur. So I have my own insurance. And what I did was I tell everyone, I made a big girl decision. It was like, this is what I want. I want a family. And the insurance plan that I had was not going to afford me that. My deductible was $3,000. I am one person, and thank God my asthma is very well controlled. So I really don't spend a whole lot of money. Yes, for years now. Thank you to Dr. Thompson, who helped me to get off my medication. So I don't spend that kind of money. Thank you, Jesus. I haven't had to have any surgeries or anything. These are the things that would eat away at your deductible. Yes. Well, and even going, because I go to all the doctors, I'm supposed to go to a year, but even going to all of them, I think by the end of the year, I might have spent $700 or something. It was really sad compared to this $3,000. So what I found out was that once the $3,000 was paid completely, then my insurance would kick in and they would cover 60%. And then once I met the out-of-pocket, there's an out-of-pocket amount of money you have to spend. Once you've met the out-of-pocket money, and when you're paying off this deductible, that amount chips away at the out-of-pocket amount too. Once you pay the out-of-pocket amount, they said they would cover 100%. So I told Dr. Cindy, she's like, great, we'll do 2 rounds because the second one will be free. I said, great. So what did I do? I called the insurance company and I said, look, I have this insurance. That deductible is high as hell. We have to figure out something else. So I got the next plan, and the next plan, my deductible is $750. And Cindy, I'm only like $50 away.
That's good, because I think so many people don't realize the difference it makes in deductible and how much you're paying out of pocket per month as well for your premium. $50 away, that's exciting news.
Right. Yeah, so I'm excited. Yeah, like I said, that whole $750 was like, that's doable. And it was crazy because I was talking to somebody and I told them, you know, my insurance went from like $400 a month to $650, $670 a month. And they were like, well, does it add up?
Yes.
I go, yes, it adds up, because there's no way that I was going to make it to $3,000. Whereas,
you have to spend a lot to make a $3,000 deductible.
Right. You have to spend a whole lot. And I was like, even with the testing that I've had, it still didn't cover that. So I was like, no, this was a smart move, and this is what I had to do. And then the out of pocket is like $85.50. Like I said, this $700 whatever is chipping away down that too. So that's coming down too. And so I once I got that clarification and understood, I said, okay, I know what this means. We're going to do this. So then when I talked to the insurance company, I made sure I got the plan that they had that worked to that. Now, they didn't cover any more than the 60 and 100. So I said, well, at least I can get it to 60 as soon as possible.
Exactly. And you made a really good point, Dr. Renee, which is the fact that you're a solopreneur. So many times when you're participating in the marketplace, you participate as your business, your LLC, or your different business entity to help you get some of those, to access to some of those employer-based benefits for yourself. The other thing to know is whenever you're looking at insurance benefits, you want to ask about medication coverage, because for a lot of these fertility plans, the medication coverage is separate from the procedure coverage. So you may have a deductible that's separate for medications and needs separate authorization from the codes that cover the procedures. So that's also important to know when you're planning.
And when I spoke to them about that, I said, so, because I knew my medication coverage, because like I said, I'm asthmatic, I was paying for my inhalers and, you know, my medication. They said, oh, it doesn't go in the medication. It goes under your medical. So they informed me of that. So I already knew that it wasn't going to be covered the way, because usually I go to the drugstore, I pay like $10 or $20. And then one day I did accidentally find out how much an inhaler was and was like, thank God for insurance, dear God. But, so I was like, what do you mean it's not under medication? They were like, no, that's not where we cover it. It's under the medical. I said, okay, love. As long as we have the understanding and I know. And then, like I said, working with Dr. Cindy, even though we're not in the same state, her office is the bomb. They were like, okay, you need to go to this lab because that's the lab that works with your insurance. And so I said, you don't have to worry about it. I'll find it. And Cindy knows I'm resourceful. She's like, before they'll find it, you'll have it. I did. I said, I was like, this is the lab. It's right here, you know, close to my house, blah, blah, blah. I can go there. I was able to go there, get my blood work. They sent everything to her. And it was great. It was easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Same thing. Any other prescription, like I had to have my mammogram and sent to her. I had it done here. Told them this is where it needs to go, sent the results to her. So it's really, really not difficult to work with her, even though she's not in the same state. You really just need to see her when it's time for retrieval and implantation. So I'm telling you, this is I wouldn't steer you wrong. I would never steer my audience wrong. She has an MD and a PhD. You guys, she's like super, super smart, okay? And I've told all my friends, Dr. Cindy has single person discounts at her office. And it's her office. It's her clinic. So her clinic, her rules.
We do. We have discounts for single persons, meaning if you're looking to be a single parent by choice. We have discounts based on income. We have discounts for those who are in the military or who've ever served in the military. If you've ever served, we don't care if you were discharged honorably, dishonorably. The fact that you were willing to serve for your country, we give you 20% off services. The same goes for people who are first responders, so police officers, firefighters, EMT, paramedics. We have a number of discounts available.
And then also, she does cater to the LGBTQA plus community. She will. She's there for everyone. So, and you'll feel comfortable.
Yeah, very inclusive clinic, very welcoming clinic. I mean, honestly, love is love, and we don't just say it, we believe it. And family is about love, and that's all we care about is loving families, wanting to grow their family. There's nothing better than that to me in terms of reward. So I love seeing it.
If you have questions, please don't forget to type them in. Another thing that's been in the news lately, and I'm sure you've seen it, it was on like 2020 or Dateline or something, some man that impregnated all these children, all these women, because he was the doctor. So Dr. Cindy has eliminated that because she has all female staff. So that's how she's thought of everything.
Yeah, that's not a question we ever really have to be concerned about. But in addition to that, we just have so many safeguards in place, right? And that particular story that made it to Dateline, really, that was one that stemmed from an OB-GYN here in Las Vegas many moons ago who did that stuff. But really, there's so many safeguards that should never have happened, but that really couldn't possibly happen nowadays, especially not at our clinic. Because, yes, we happen to have 17 women working at the clinic. 17 egg ovary containing people.
Okay, so we have a couple questions coming in. Here's the first one. What can we expect when we come to your clinic?
Well, the first thing is we're doing all of our consultations via video medicine. So you meet with me first. I know some clinics you talk to a nurse first, you talk to someone else, but really because I want to personalize your care, I meet with patients first because it's important to me to hear your story, really figure out what your needs are so that we can figure out your goals, the shared decision-making process. And then based on your history, based on your needs, based on your fertility needs, we target your medical evaluation in terms of what tests you need, because sometimes maybe I won't do an HSG depending on what the person's story is, and we'll just go to preparing for egg freezing. If it's someone who maybe is creating embryos because they need to use a surrogate, for example, there's certain things we won't do compared to someone who's going to carry the pregnancy themselves, while there are other things we must do because we're anticipating that someone else has to carry the pregnancy. And so it's very much personalized. So that's the first thing. You meet with me via video. So you can be anywhere in the world and meet with me via the video in the privacy and comfort of your own space. When it comes to drawing blood work, if you're in Las Vegas, you come to our clinic. We're a full service clinic, so everything is done at the clinic. Blood work, ultrasound, hysterosalpingogram, every service that you need related to your fertility is performed at our clinic by myself or my nurse practitioner, Christine. In terms, sorry, I thought I turned off the ringer there. In terms of once your evaluation is complete, you always meet with me in follow-up to go over your results, to go over my recommendations for your treatment. But ultimately, the decision for what you do is yours, right? As your physician, it is my job to make sure you're 100% informed of your options, but it is not my job to tell you what you must do. My job is to facilitate your decision. So answer your questions, make sure you get all the information you needed. If maybe you really were only seeing me for consultation, second opinion, that's fine too. In no way am I someone who's so bound by ego that if you decided not to pursue treatment with my clinic that I won't give you information. Absolutely not. We do second opinions as well. And so I think that's important because I've come across so many people who are afraid to seek counseling at clinics because they feel like they're going to be pressured into doing treatments, pressured into having to do stuff. That's not what we do at all. That's never been my belief. And as a physician, as a human being, as the daughter of immigrants and being an immigrant myself, I'm very mindful of the fact and the dynamics where many times we end up feeling pressured. As a Black woman, I felt that. And so we definitely don't do that via our clinic, but we provide information. Absolutely.
This is another good question. How old is too old?
Well, you know, how old is too old is a very interesting question because I think when people hear too old, the question is, how old is too old for me to carry a baby? And that age is actually way higher than you'd expect versus how old is too old to expect to have viable eggs from your ovaries. So for example, at a clinic like mine, if you're otherwise healthy, meeting all the criteria, you can get pregnant up until your high 50s, really, and carry a pregnancy. The bigger question is, where will we get the egg from to help you achieve your pregnancy? And so in terms of natural fertility, we know that by age 35, our egg numbers and egg quality starts to decline. And by age 44, it's really hard to find viable eggs that can cause a pregnancy, but it's not 0%. So even at 47, your chance of pregnancy in terms of using your own eggs is in the single digits. I won't lie to you, it's in the single digits. However, you still have a chance with your own eggs. The bigger question is, how many times do you have to try to finally achieve a pregnancy with your own eggs versus whether we need to start talking about using donated eggs, egg donation, which is eggs from someone younger, typically someone between the age of 21 and 30. And egg donation is regulated in the United States, but it's actually really straightforward. There are multiple options. You can use eggs from an egg bank, meaning eggs that have already been retrieved and are available for purchase, such that you can pick out eggs today and have embryos ready to be put into you 2 weeks later. That's how quickly that can happen, even if you're low on your own eggs. We could talk about egg donation as well, Dr. Renee, if you want me to go into the details of that. But specifically to Tati's question, how old is too old? Really, you can carry a pregnancy well into your 50s. And if you're either maybe medically unfit to carry a pregnancy, so that would be whether maybe you've had a hysterectomy, so you can't carry one yourself, maybe you have an underlying medical condition that precludes you from being able to safely carry a pregnancy, meaning carry a pregnancy to the point where you can deliver a viable baby and also not compromise your own life, then if you're in someone who has that preclusion, we may have to talk about using a surrogate, meaning someone, a gestational carrier is actually the accurate word, but there's so many options to achieve pregnancy and achieve parenthood that what I tell people is get a consult, because again, it should be personalized for you, right? One person's reason for not being able to get pregnant may be very different from your reason. Similarly, what works for one person may not be what ultimately works for you to help you achieve your pregnancy. And Jas is asking another question, which is, we should save our eggs by a certain age. We recommend considering egg freezing, yes. So here are the hard truths. When someone with ovaries is born, they're born with somewhere between 1 to 2 million eggs in their ovaries. By the time they enter puberty, they're down to about 400,000 eggs total left in those ovaries. Here's the real kicker. By the time you're 30 years old, 70% of those eggs that you were born with gone. By the time you're 40, 97% of those eggs that you were born with are gone. So that's the first thing. Just thinking numbers wise, they're dropping at a really fast rate. The second thing, though, is pertaining to what I said first. You're born with all of your eggs. Not only are we born with all of our eggs are formed somewhere when we're about 20 weeks old as a fetus in the womb. And so technically your eggs are about 4 months older than you are. And as you're aging, they're aging too, right? And it's the same egg. It's not like the egg is replenishing itself and making new versions of itself. It's the same egg that you were born with. And so as you're aging, it's also aging energy-wise, it's metabolically aging. And so it's not able to do the same things it can do at 25 when it hits 40, 45, and even if it's around at 50. And so it's really important to try to stop the clock on the aging of the egg. And that's why we say by age 30, you should at the very least be getting that AMH test done, anti-Mullerian hormone. And if your AMH is under 2, then you should definitely be seeking a fertility consultation just to talk about fertility preservation, which is freezing eggs for future use. Definitely by 35, you should be looking into it. And 40 at the latest, you should be looking into it, freezing your eggs. If you're past 40, then we understand you should still get a consultation. Why? Well, at 40, we have to talk about different things. We may not be talking about egg freezing. We may be talking about embryo banking, meaning we're going to create embryos, because the bigger question is how are the eggs going to perform past 40? And if somebody's looking to preserve for future use, the big question is, if you were 43, for example, and froze 10 eggs, is that enough to use later on, given what we know about how eggs performed? Or would it be better to actually fertilize those eggs now, see how they work in terms of creating embryos? If we didn't, then we know before your eggs are all gone that we need to go back in and get some more eggs. But let's say you didn't want to commit your eggs to sperm and you're over 40, then we talk about the realistic numbers. So for example, at 40, you're going to need somewhere between 18 to 20 eggs for a live born baby, 18 to 20 mature eggs. If you're about 44, we're talking needing 25 to 30 eggs to have a good shot at a live born baby in terms of looking at the overall population and what we know about how eggs perform. And so that means if you're over 40, many times you might end up needing multiple egg harvesting cycles to get enough eggs to create embryos. And I don't think we're very realistic in conversation many times when we talk to patients. So, you know, I've seen patients in their 40s, they get 6 eggs and they think, okay, good, I'm happy, I'm done. I've done what I needed to do. But numbers wise, the odds are against you when the numbers are so low in terms of egg number, total egg number. So that's why many people have to do multiple cycles, and why clinics that facilitate that for patients over 40 will talk about things like mini IVF, which is you're stimulating, but you're going in many steps because you know the ovaries are only going to give you a certain number of eggs in each month, but we need a total number of eggs to really give you the best chance. So that's important to know too. And when you go in to talk about it, ask about that, right? It's really a numbers game. And the biggest determinant of numbers when it comes to eggs is egg age. 5 eggs at 25, you're probably going to have a live born baby from 5 eggs. Whereas 5 eggs at 40, the odds are really not in your favor that we're going to end up with a live born baby there.
So this is a good question. Dawn would like to know, so what's the cost out of pocket for a consultation?
So at our clinic, I think it's $199, and if you're paying out of pocket, that includes your consult and your follow-up visit. If you need testing and you don't have insurance, we also have a cash pay summary price for the basic tests, so that you're not breaking the bank to find out your numbers. And I do think that's important. I've seen people where the evaluation, just doing the testing, the blood test, the ultrasound, and by the time they're done, they spend $6,000 out of pocket just finding out if they can get treatments. We don't do that. Our total everything, you're still spending well under $1,000 to find out all the information if you're completely cash paid. But I will tell you guys this, the majority of people have some form of benefit or have access to some form of coverage. They just need to be savvy enough to start talking to insurance, talking to HR. When it's open enrollment for your insurance, really getting those codes and sending them in so that you can find the right plan for you.
And FYI, if you are a solopreneur, you can actually go to the marketplace still right now and do insurance. Once we got our new president, thank you, Jesus, he made it so that people can still go. Yes. So you could still go, even because what it was before was open enrollment was like October, November. And then once it was shut unless you had some horrible incidents in your life, like someone died or something, you had some disease or something. So lost your job. So there's no, that's no longer. So you can definitely still change it now if you want to go change it. So please definitely go look into that. Dawn said, how many eggs per cycle and what do you pay per cycle?
So the number of eggs depends on your AMH, your anti-Müllerian hormone. So when we do that test, AMH is a measure of what we call ovarian reserve. It's a hormone made uniquely by your ovaries, and it's made by those cells which have been taking care of your eggs ever since they were formed, back when you were 20 weeks old in the belly. And so AMH gives us a good sense of that total number of eggs that you have, or what we call your ovarian reserve. And not only does it give us that sense, it also gives us a sense, usually we couple it with ultrasound of the ovaries, and we can tell you how many eggs we expect from your ovaries in a given cycle. And so that's how we can estimate, and I'm really good at estimating. So usually, like, for example, an AMH of 2, we're probably going to get somewhere between 14 to 20 eggs from someone if their AMH is 2.0. And so that's what that is. So the number of eggs is dependent on your ovarian reserve, which is your AMH testing and ultrasound to help us determine that. In terms of do you pay per cycle, for the most part, yes. Now, some clinics have multi-cycle packages, and we do too, wherein if we anticipate from upfront that you're going to need more than one cycle, let's say you're maybe 42, and you're coming in telling me, Dr. Duke, I want to be able to do IVF. I want to be able to have 2 live-born children. I want to be able to know that they're boy, girl. Well, as the more you say you want to be able to do, the more we're having to select from. So we usually say for every 3 embryos, 1 live-born baby. But now if we're going to be testing the embryos for things like Down syndrome, et cetera, and determine if they're male or female, now we need more embryos. So like at 42, we're going to need about 7 to 8 embryos for a live-born baby if we're also testing the embryos ahead of time to know their genetics and their chromosome status. So suddenly we're talking even more cycles. So it depends. If your AMH is 2, 3, 4, and you're 42, if you're high AMH, you may only need 1, 2 cycles max. But let's say your AMH is under 1, your anti-Müllerian hormone is under 1. We're starting to talk about the fact that we need multiple cycles, because it doesn't matter how much we pray, how amazing your clinic is and the medications are and how well you've taken care of your body, the ovaries are only going to give us what the ovaries are going to give us. And so let's say your AMH is 0.4. We could be miraculous, but we're probably not ever going to get more than 8 eggs out of an ovary that has an AMH of 0.4. And so that's where I keep it real. I'm very realistic with my patients. And it's why we have patients who have near undetectable AMH and they're still walking around with their babies today, because we were honest about it up front. And we also have those special priced cycles, like I said, so that you're not paying these tremendously high numbers out of pocket for one cycle that we know is only going to yield you 6 eggs when you actually realistically need 18 eggs. It's better to break it up over multiple small cycles so that you can achieve your goal, because your goal is a take-home baby. Your goal isn't simply to say you did a cycle at an IVF clinic. Your goal is baby in hand or enough eggs to give your baby in the future.
Definitely. So if we have our tubes tied, Draka said, can we still do this?
Yes. So something like in vitro is independent of tube status. In fact, IVF is the only way to achieve pregnancy if either your fallopian tubes have been removed. For example, if someone's had salpingectomies because of ectopic pregnancy or because of swollen tubes, what we call hydrosalpinx, or if they had the tube twist on itself, or if they've had a ligation or a tubal ligation, which is what tubes tied. And of course, there are different ways that we tie tubes, right? Nowadays, most times when we tie tubes, we're really just removing them. And that's because we know that ovarian cancer, the most common form of ovarian cancer, actually starts in the fallopian tube. So nowadays, if someone is saying they're done with their childbearing and someone's going in to address the fallopian tubes, many times they're removing the tube to decrease your lifetime risk of ovarian cancer anyway. But if you didn't have the whole tube removed, sometimes a tubal ligation can be reversed and the tubes put back together. That depends on a number of factors. The way it was done, was it just done with a clip, or did they literally sever a piece of the tube, like I said, or take all of the tube? Or is it one where they just burned the middle of the tube? But it also matters how old you are. Because again, if you're like 42, 43, it actually does not make a lot of cost sense, but also pregnancy sense to go through the process of a tubal ligation when really IVF is what gives you your highest chance in the shortest time frame, because you're racing the clock again, like I said, if you're 40 or older and looking to conceive. And so, you know, that's a big thing to consider as well.
So we are so blessed to have my friend, Dr. Shirley, with us. Dr. Shirley has went through this. So she is going to join us. Good evening, Dr. Shirley.
Hello, thanks for having me.
No, thank you for coming.
Dr. Duke, wonderful information. Everything's on point. This is like priceless.
Right. Oh, and you know, one other thing I need to say before we have Dr. Shirley tell her story, you guys, there's a whole lot of fertility clinics out there. There's a ton. But you need to ask them specifically, what is their freeze rate? Like their thaw rate. So when they thaw these eggs, how many deliveries do they actually have? Because a lot of people know how to freeze eggs, but then the thawing process, you won't have a baby. So, you know, you see people paying all this money, and then they have no child. But then they go up at another clinic and boom.
Yeah. And that's really
nothing wrong with them.
I think, you know, again, which is why I love doing these sessions with Dr. Renee, because so many people don't know that part, which is especially when it comes to egg freezing. In terms of embryo creation and freezing embryos, the majority of clinics in the world are good at that now. I say majority, but there's still some that have really abysmal numbers when you look at their chance of pregnancy if they have to thaw an embryo and transfer it. But when it comes to egg freezing, that's especially still requiring expertise. And so anyone can freeze an egg, but you really want to look at the clinic's thaw rates. How many of their eggs survive the thawing process? How many of their eggs actually get fertilized after injected with sperm? Because a frozen egg must be injected with sperm. Once an egg is frozen, much like other eggs we are familiar with, the outer shell of the egg hardens. And so the only way a sperm can get in is we literally have to pierce that shell, what's known as the zona pellucida, and inject the egg with the sperm directly into the egg. And so we actually need to be able to hear that information. How successful are they at doing that? But more importantly, as Dr. Renee said, have they had pregnancies from people's eggs that were frozen before and thawed now? And have any of those people had babies? And if a clinic is hemming and hawing over pregnancies from frozen eggs, that's probably not the place where you should freeze your eggs. And it's important because, like I said, anyone can freeze an egg, but the question is, what protocol are they using? It's not enough to say, oh, I'm going to take my eggs from this place that froze it and take it to another clinic that now has great numbers with thawing eggs, it's really still very important from step one, how you freeze them.
So Dr. Shirley, please tell us about your journey. So I know that you decided a couple years ago that this is what you wanted to do.
Yes. So as you know, went through medical school, dedicated a lot of my time to education, but always wanted to be a mom. So in 2017, life circumstances dictated that, you know what, you need to sit back and reassess because you're about to be 40. I have enough information to know everything that Dr. Duke was describing with the eggs that you're born with and the breakdown and how the number dwindles down. I'm like, stop playing games. You really need to sit and have these difficult discussions with yourself. And I did that. I was like, you know what, this is what I want. There's technology. Right? I grew up, a certain way, you're going to get married, it's not happening. Okay, that's fine. Okay, different stories, different paths. So I had to do that self-talk, make the decision that I'm comfortable with, right? Not letting fear dictate my life's journey, right? And then I made that decision, October 2017. I said, I'm going to go in, I'm going to get evaluated. So like Dr. Duke was saying, my doctor that I went to, how did I choose them? I chose them because I rotated through their clinic when I was a medical student. You see? So I knew who they were. I liked their practice. I liked their bedside manner, everything about them. So it was an easy decision. When I went and I met with my doctor, who did not look like me, I would have loved Dr. Duke to be my doctor. He did not look like me, but he had 5 children. So he was about family and he understood my desire. So he was very patient with me because I had a lot of anxiety around it. And the process started, we did the evaluation. I did not have to have an HSG like Dr. Duke was saying, because certain things were, different for me. But we did do the AMH. At the time, again, I have enough knowledge, but when you're the patient, it's different. It's like, what are you talking about? Okay. So I didn't even realize that my AMH was like less than 1 Dr. Duke. Like, okay, and I have my baby, she's walking around. So we did 1 cycle initially and we got, to the embryo stage. I did an implantation. It did not take. I was devastated, right? Like, did I wait too long? All these, did I wait too long? Is there a chance? So he sat down with me. He's like, you know what? This is the first try. We can tweak. We can do this. We can tailor. And that's exactly what he did. And the second time around, I got pregnant. I actually had implanted 2 embryos because I was so nervous, and I did have twins up until I think 10 weeks. So I just ended up with my daughter. But the fact that I implanted 2 at my age, at that time I was 40. I had just turned 40. That's also very risky, but it's a discussion that you and your doctor, you have to have these conversations. And also, like Dr. Duke was saying, if your doctor is not receptive to your questions, to your fears, your anxiety, that's not the doctor you need to be speaking with. Like, they should be very patient, like hand holding. Like, I used to tell them, I'm like, I may have this MD, but I am currently your patient. Like, talk to me like I did not go to medical school. I really need to understand like the basics. And so that was very helpful. And, he was very, very patient. Dr. Renee was mentioning about the insurance and all that. So at the time for me, I was working for the state of New York. So I had pretty good insurance. And also at the time too, Dr. Duke mentioned, they did pass the state law. It wasn't in effect at that time, but there are things like my clinic, the billing office, my best friend. Like they have to be. I had her on like speed dial, email, because they print out the sheet for you. They put all the numbers next to each other, like what's covered, how many cycle, and that was very helpful. Again, because financially, it's a big, it can really drain you, right? And let's not even talk about my student loans and all that. And even before I sat down and made this decision, I met with my financial advisor. That's how serious I was about this. I'm like, I want to start a family. I have these loans. Is this responsible? And she said to me, and I'll never forget, she goes, don't you let money dictate your happiness. Do not do this. Right. And we went forward, right? So my daughter, go ahead, Dr.
I'm glad you said that, because there are a number of ways that people can also afford fertility treatments because they're considered major life events. So even 401ks, 403ks, you can make withdrawals for those because they're actually considered qualified medical events. So it's really important to have that financial advisor conversation, because they can help you figure out and carve out money as well, if that's what you're determined to do. Yes.
Yeah. So again, Dr. Renee knows Dr. Duke's on my Facebook. They see I'm like the proudest mommy in the world. Videos. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if anyone has questions, but again, the best decision in my life. And the process again for me, I have friends. So after I did this, of course, you know, once you go forward, people tell me, you're so brave, you're so bold. I never see myself in that light. I'm starting to walk into that now a little bit more. But from my experience, I've had friends who've gone to get evaluated even. One of them, she went to get evaluated. Both tubes were clogged. She never knew. I have another friend, endometriosis. They wouldn't know. They wouldn't know unless, you know, they took the leap, you know, like after I've done this and they're like, you know what, let me just at least get the evaluation done. I have another friend who just gave birth to her baby, single mom by choice also, because again, if Shirley can do it, anybody can do it. Right?
Single parenting by choice, they're some of my favorite patients, and maybe it's because we know we're sort of their partner in this, right? But my single parents by choice, I have single moms by choice, I have single dads by choice.
Yes.
And, you know, like for a single mom by choice, it may be as straightforward as we get donor sperm and we're doing insemination versus doing in vitro. Because again, we're talking about how many kids do you want, what's your choice and chance you want in terms of highest chance of pregnancy. In vitro gives you that as you near 40 and cross 40. If it's a single dad by choice, we're having to help him find eggs, which we can go through the egg banks. We're helping him decide what he's looking for, helping him find a gestational carrier, a surrogate. You know, our single dads by choice are spending somewhere upward of $100,000 to achieve that pregnancy so they can have their babies and their children. But it's an amazing thing to watch. The way, if someone's determined this is where I'm going now, or this is where I'm in my life at this stage, how they go about it. It's impressive and inspiring. Oh, one more thing.
Go ahead.
There are grants as well. So
yes.
grants out there. And so, for example, there's Fertility for colored girls. There is Baby Quest. There are a number of the Cade Foundation, which was started by Dr. Tamina Cade. There's so many options. We actually keep a running list of the grants. And in that book that's coming, and I know I keep saying it's coming and then I delay it, but it is going to be dropped at the end of March. It also has the full list of the grants and the websites where you can go look into the grants and apply for grants to help you fund your fertility journey if you so need it.
The billing office did offer that too. I wanted to mention that. Yep. There are things that you can qualify for through those resources.
And then also, Dr. Cindy, like I said, she has everything at the clinic, but she also said there's also discounts on the pharmaceuticals will give you discounts as well on the medication. So you got to make sure you ask questions. But Dr. Shirley wrote a book, you guys, a children's book for her daughter that is the cutest book ever. And if I was in Chicago in my apartment, I'd hold it up now, but of course I'm not. But because of course I bought the book because it was just so cute. Her illustrations are just heavenly. But you guys need to check it out. The link is in the box below. It's on Amazon. Check out her book. Dawn Day said, what's the storage cost? The storage cost is like a Starbucks. It's $50 a month, really, most places. So $600 a year, which really is nothing.
And some of your insurance pays for the storage also. Some insurance pays for the storage. Yes.
Yeah.
So I really think it's important to highlight what Dr. Renee said, $50 a month. Because so many of us are like, oh, I don't want to do $50 a month. But if you're talking about your future progeny, your future children, it's a $50 a month investment to give you the option of biological kids in the future. That's huge. And really, it's 3 or 4 really good coffees a month.
Yeah. Exactly. Like once a week. I mean, so definitely, as soon as Dr. Duke drops the book, of course, you will see everything here. I'll have everything on all my pages, on my website and all that great stuff. And Dr. Duke and I were actually going to do a live tour this year because Black families don't do family planning. We don't talk about it. All we do is tell everyone don't get pregnant. And we never remember to go back and say, oh, the clock's ticking, you should probably go do something about that now. And so we were going to do a tour, and then of course COVID hit. So hopefully we will be able to do that very, very soon, if not virtually do something, because it is such an important conversation that not enough people are talking about. But our forever first lady, she talked about it in Becoming. Gabrielle Union came out and talked about it. Candy Burris. There's a lot of celebrities now that are coming out and speaking about it. So then now, who else?
Kelly Stewart, which is Niecy Nash's
Kelly Stewart,
actress.
Yeah,
yeah.
Niecy Nash's sister on the Cedric the Entertainer show.
Yes.
But you guys, and she does Warrior Wednesdays every Wednesdays on IG. So follow her on IG, you guys. But this is a conversation that needs to keep having, because we need all of our generations to have it. We don't need, just us 40 somethings. We need everyone to talk about it so that we can make sure that, we continue on these generations, because we all know Black women are getting our degrees and we're getting these high profile jobs. And sometimes you get lost in the sauce and you forget, oh, that was something I wanted to do, but it was so low on your to-do list that you just forgot, or you just hadn't found the man. So you guys, please, 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 let's try to get, all of the young ladies educated so that they know, okay, I need to get a job, but I also should go freeze my eggs when I graduate from college.
Yeah, and also letting families know that that's also one way you can empower your daughters, right? Which is, I can't tell you how many non-Black families I see treating their college graduates to egg-free cycles. If they're starting medical school, starting graduate school, they're making sure they freeze eggs. I've had a few Black families who've done it too, and I've always been so heartened when I see it happen. And fun fact, for those of us who aspire to be doctors, those who are training to be doctors, we happen to know that 25% of women physicians struggle with infertility. Right. And so it's real. We know it amongst engineers. We're looking also at probably approaching 20 to 30% of them struggling with infertility. And that's in part because we're delaying attempts at pregnancy or growing our families until after we feel like we're done training, established our careers, etc. And oftentimes that means you're approaching 40 or crossed 40. And so we need to take some active steps. Again, freezing your eggs doesn't mean you have to use them. You may never use them, but it's having them available to you should you discover you're infertile. Because again, being 40 doesn't mean you're infertile. Being 43, if you haven't been trying, doesn't mean you're infertile. But certainly if you discover you're infertile, having frozen eggs when you were younger is a huge plus.
Yes, it's an insurance policy. That's what I tell everyone. It's an insurance policy. And had the right person said something to me when I was that age, I probably would have done it, but the right person didn't say it to me. So now I have knowledge. And so now I'm trying to impart it on the rest of everyone that'll listen so that they don't get into a bind and find themselves having to, because let me tell you, freezing eggs is cheaper than embryos, you guys. So why not try and get this done at 30 something when you don't have to worry about embryos after 40? So, and then also a lot of times you don't need as much medication when you're younger. So everything can be a whole lot cheaper the earlier you start thinking about it rather than waiting later. Shirley, I didn't tell Dr. Cindy, Shirley's actually West Indian as well, Dr. Cindy. So I just have to know, what does your mom think?
So, what does she think? I've been a very strong-willed, strong personality child, so there's not a lot of surprises, but she was supportive. She was supportive. At the age of, 40, having gone through medical school, staying out of a lot of trouble, I think I can make some decisions on my own that are pretty responsible. So, we talked about it. For example, Dr. Duke, this may be, a thing too. Like, I had to pull up YouTube to show her what a follicle and an egg and a sperm do, and she has 4 kids. Yes. It's because it's not something they discuss, so yeah, she was like, what's this thing with I'm like, okay, Mom, let's just look at this let's just do this YouTube video. So things like that. She was like, I don't know, this is very different. I'm like,
I'll tell you, a lot of my Black single moms by choice, they're usually coming in with their family in tow. Their parents are coming in. They're part of the.
But they don't know. They want to know.
They want to know, and they're ready, right? So I don't have any children yet. I did freeze eggs, but I can tell you the big joke in my family is on a regular basis, my mom's like, just have the baby. I'll take care of it. Just bring me the baby. And it's really funny because you go from being in your teens and 20s where everybody's like, oh, you know, now they're telling you, just bring the baby and leave it here. Leave it here.
Yeah.
You know? And it's funny to watch. But yeah, no, a lot of my Black single moms by choice, even very religious ones.
Yes.
I have patients whose pastor mom, pastor dad is coming in with them to create those embryos and start that family. And, you know, I've actually visited a few churches to talk about this because it's not enough to pray for sister to find Mr. Right, etc. We've got to talk about the proactive steps to take. And also, I mean, we all know people who felt like they were racing the clock and made partner choices.
Yes.
Really weren't the best for them, but because they
say that again.
Yeah. And it's important that we talk about that because you're making a child, and why intentionally bring them into a already toxic relationship simply because you want to be able to say, I had a child. We have a lot of ways to help with that too. Yes. And each thing is personal, and I get that.
Yeah.
Well,
but I have everyone, a lot of support.
Go ahead. I know that. I was just like, it's amazing. And I just wondered what she thought in the beginning. but you guys, you can find, what'd you say?
No, just the concept of like, you know, sperm and like, just the visual for her. She needed to understand.
Okay. But you guys, all the information, you can make appointments with Dr. Duke to get your consultation. All that is in the box below. And Shirley's link to her Amazon site in the box below. Dr. Cindy is on social media everywhere at Dr. Cindy M. Duke, everywhere. And Shirley is S. Leon MD. And that was it. And that was all. That was Renee's Remedies tonight. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
As always, Dr. Renee. Bye.